Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts, including Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Pat Riley, USI, Ben Drummond, D2 Integrated Solutions, Frank Hennessy, Premier Planning, and Matthew Shapiro Obermeyer. And we have a great lineup of guests on our show today. Matthew, will you please give us the rundown?
I'd love to. I think it's going to be a great show this morning, Herb. We're starting off with Tammy White, the president of the United Way of Berks County. Then we have Erich Herkloz, the CEO of Strive Physical Therapy and Sports Rehabilitation, followed by Bob Rosania, the CEO of Ehmke Manufacturing Company. And we're wrapping it up today with Mitchell Lightman, the president of Exact Payroll.
Let's get to know our first guest, Tammy White, president, United Way of Berks County. Tammy, what is the United Way of Berks County? What are you guys doing?
Good morning. So United Way of Berks County brings people together that care deeply about the community. We identify issues, solutions, and we put funding towards services that are helping our most vulnerable families. That's the quick rundown.
And tell me, where you're from originally, how many brothers and sisters, where are you in the pecking order?
From Middletown, Pennsylvania, and I'm the oldest sister.
All righty. And 8 to 14, were you involved with Girl Scouts? Was it the marching band? Was it science? Was it sports? What were you doing 8 to 14?
So from 8 to 14, Girl Scouts, it was sports, it was, working, you name it, I was involved.
All righty. Drew.
Tammy, tell us about mom and dad.
So mom was the chief operating officer of the house. She stayed home. She held down the fort. She started working when we were in high school. My father was a steel worker, worked all kinds of shifts and often double shifts.
What was the impact of seeing your dad work double shifts as a kid?
The impact was understanding, number one, the importance of working and the value of working, but also it was understanding what he was doing in order to support the family. And that carried home. I mean, my father would have us helping to roof the house, split and firewood, that type of stuff. So the value of hard work.
Matthew?
It's interesting when you talk about the value of hard work. How young were you when you had your first real job?
First real job was 15 at Hershey Park.
And what did you do as an employee of Hershey Park, where I remember riding the roller coasters and having fun? What did you do that was different than all the other kids working there?
Right. So at 15, you're not allowed to run the ride. So I did anything else that they would ask me to do. I, sweep the park. I worked in concession stands. I worked concerts at the arena. It really was, if they wanted me to work, I was there and I would pretty much do whatever was requested.
And what's that willingness to do whatever was requested have to do with running the United Way today?
Well, as an organization, we're a small organization, staff of 25. So, we all pitch in. A delivery comes, we all unload the truck and put the supplies away. It is about rolling up your sleeves and doing what is necessary.
Frank?
So, Tammy, the United Way is all about the betterment of the community. I'm curious, how would you describe your community growing up, your household and your neighborhood where you grew up?
So very middle class. We lived on a lane, and our lane was our community pretty much. Because my mom was home, oftentimes the kids would gather at our house. We had an above ground pool that got used hard by all the kids in the neighborhood. And, we were a neighborhood that took care of each other.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that. What do you mean take care of each other? And you also said your mom was a caregiver.
Yeah, my mom is the oldest of 6, so she's a natural caregiver. And, if any of the families or neighbors were struggling or needed something, my mom was one of the first to raise a hand to provide support and help, whatever that meant.
Does a caregiving mentality help in your role at the United Way?
Absolutely. That's what we're all about, is caring for those who are most vulnerable in our community. And, we have to be open to providing support, help, and, we lead by our heart often.
Shannon?
Tammy, in the green room, you mentioned that your grandmother has always been a source of inspiration for you. Tell us more about that.
So, my grandmother also, she worked out of the house. But when we were growing up and as kids, we spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she was when we were with her, we were the most important thing in the world. And she would, get on the floor and play with us. She would take us on little adventures where we would, go and explore the neighborhood, the area. She really taught me what it means to be present and to be open and listen, and a listener.
And how do you carry that with you today as president of United Way Bucks County?
What it means to me is that whenever I am with volunteers, with staff, I need to be present, and I need to hear what they have to say. And I want to make sure that they understand when they are with me, they're the most important thing in the world, and that I'm here to listen.
Pat?
Tammy, you mentioned that you played a lot of sports growing up. Is there any sport that you liked more than the others?
Softball was probably my number one sport, and what I played the most, because I started with T-ball when I was 5.
And what kind of role did you play on that team, on the softball teams growing up?
Again, played a lot of different positions over the years. I was pitcher, I was catcher, I was second base, I was outfield. I pretty much did, again, where I was needed.
And how was your, would you consider yourself a leader on that team?
I was the lead encourager. I was somebody who always wanted to make sure that people felt good about, their role and what they did. And even when things didn't go quite as well as planned, I was always there to help them and encourage them.
And how does that carry forward into your role today?
Again, whenever you're in an organization, you have to take certain risks. And, I want the team at United Way to feel confident in taking a risk and understanding that, sometimes you don't end up being as successful as you'd like, and it's okay. And you just need to be trite, get back up on the horse.
Ben?
I mean, you've spoken with a strong sense of purpose, family, community. What does that mean to you to have a platform at the United Way where you can have a meaningful impact?
It's incredible. I feel like I'm one of the most, lucky people in the world because of what I do. And, I work
what do you find so
positive.
What do you find so meaningful about what you do? What are you talking about?
Because, what we do matters. What we do means that a family who is struggling with food has food. It means that somebody is not going to be homeless. It means that children have safe places to go after school. And during the pandemic, we are supporting clubs that are allowing children to go for remote learning.
You mentioned earlier in the green room when we were getting to know you that you adopted a dog because you didn't feel like she was going to have the life she deserved otherwise. And I think what really struck us was you're all about providing the opportunity. That's really what you're about personally. It seems like your personal mission sort of like aligns directly with United Ways. Am I correct about that?
Yes. Everybody deserves the opportunity to have a good life. And truly, that is what United Way is about. It's about providing opportunity. It's about supporting people.
Where in your life
perhaps,
does that come from?
Their luck is
Where
down.
in your life does that come from?
I think it comes from, growing up middle class. My parents, they worked for everything they have today. And, they had support of their family. And, I guess I look at the community as my family. And, how do we provide opportunities so that everybody can have, a decent life?
Perfect. What's the website address for United Way of Berks County? What's your website address?
It's uwberks.org.
Okay. We've been speaking with Tammy White, president of the United Way of Berks County, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment right after this break. Don't go away.
You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors.
We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. And I'd like to introduce Erich Herkloz, CEO of Strive Physical Therapy and Sports Rehabilitation. Erich, what is Strive Physical Therapy and Sports Rehabilitation?
We are an outpatient physical therapy and occupational therapy provider that serves the communities throughout 23 locations, which is really Central Jersey, Southern Jersey, and the Philadelphia region.
Where you're from originally, how many brothers and sisters?
I'm originally from Brick, New Jersey, which is down the Jersey Shore, and I have one older sister.
Gotcha. Frank.
Erich, let's start with mom and dad. What did they do for a living, and how would you describe them?
My father was a New Jersey state trooper. He was fit a lot of the current stereotypes with state troopers. He was stoic, very driven, hardworking, structured. My mother, the COO of our family, as Tammy White said earlier, and worked part-time for the town and then full-time for the town, and really kept us all connected and kept everyone on point.
Who were you more like, Erich?
I was fortunate that I have a little bit of both of them. I definitely have my mother's what I'll call emotional IQ, her ability to connect with people.
So
I have my father.
That connection, is that important? How does that help your patients heal, both on the physical side and the emotional side of Strive Physical Therapy?
Well, for anyone who's been to therapy, they understand, it's one thing to ask a person a question. It's another thing to listen and understand what they're telling you. Those are two completely separate things. And that's a unique skill set my mother definitely has.
Wow. Drew.
Erich, tell us about Coach Wolf.
Coach Wolf was my high school football coach in Brick, New Jersey. Incredibly stand-up man. He's been a tremendous influence on my life. The structure, the discipline, as well as the team-oriented vision that he puts in place for his teams is exceptional.
And when you're faced with like a tough decision at the office, what do you hear Coach telling you?
It's really not about – the decision is about what's best for the team. The decision's not about one individual or one person, regardless of if it is impacting one person. There's a trickle-down effect that affects everyone. You have to think about everybody in the room, not just one person.
Mm-hmm. Shannon?
Erich, do you ever have an opportunity to interact with your patients?
All the time. Yeah, both obviously when I'm treating them, but if you see them outside of the office as well.
And why do you take the time to treat them when you have people that can do that for you?
Because it's so important to get to know them. It's so important to understand what drives our patients, our communities, who they are, what their needs are. It goes far beyond the musculoskeletal condition, pain, loss of function that they're presenting with.
Mm-hmm.
Erich, what does it mean to you when one of your patients has a breakthrough?
Incredibly empowering. That's why you do what you do. That's your why behind the entire company that's in place, is to create that impact on people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Pat?
Erich, you had some pretty high praise for your sister in the green room. You could tell you have a lot of respect for her. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Sure. My sister owns her own political fundraising and lobbying firm in New Jersey. She is 5 years my elder, so close growing up as much as a brother and sister would be. But now both of us being entrepreneurs and in the business world, it's created a whole new level of connection and bond in our relationship.
And what do you mean by that?
The way we look at problems now, it definitely changes the way we think about teams, the way we start to structure things. We also approach things a lot differently. The organization side that I bring to my business is not necessarily the same way my sister organizes hers, but she has this, fearless approach towards opportunities or ventures that is inspiring for me when things get in front of me.
Erich, it seems to me you've got this tremendous ability to absorb lots of different ways of doing things and just come back with this connection and this respect. Does that ability of yours to connect and really respect who people are and figure out where they fit have anything to do with the fact you've been able to scale this to 23 different centers?
I would say yes. I'm biased, though, but I believe that's true. And I think, it goes back to Coach Wolf or my mother or any of these people we're talking about. It's the unique component to recognize how valuable every single person is, no matter what role or position they're serving, and ensuring that everybody on that team recognizes that value. You take it back to Coach Wolf, and you may have the backup defensive tackle. Well, he's just as important as the starter, because if he's not ready to go in and the starter goes down, your team's at a loss.
So you have a natural ability of figuring out where people fit?
I think so. I think I have I think I'm uniquely skilled in that area. I would agree with that.
How young were you when this was showing up, 8 to 14, this ability of yours to put your finger on people's souls and where they fit?
I definitely did this while I was growing up, between odd jobs, creating a little landscaping business in the neighborhood with friends, or the snow shoveling business. And it carried through college as I started to do some entrepreneurial work in college, working for different businessmen in the town, whether it was doing auditions in the restaurant or doing project management for them and pulling friends in who could assist and help with different jobs or responsibilities.
So even though it all has a common thread of business, the more and more common thread is your ability to understand who people are and put teams together.
I would agree, because, I never think of myself as a good businessman, but I do think of myself, and using this word we talked about earlier, but a connector. I like to bring people together. I like to put people in positions of success. One of my greatest joys in the roles and opportunities I've served is watching some of our individuals become regional directors and move up into C-suite roles, and seeing these people who I've known since they started with Strive, and now 10 years later, they're running divisions, departments, and, achieving new heights, and thinking I may have played a role in that.
Ben?
You've mentioned a couple of times the word structured household, structure with your coach. And obviously you have a history of team building. What's the relationship like there?
I don't think you can have success as you from a team perspective without that structure. Everybody's got to know the responsibilities of the other person, and not only know them, but they've got to trust that individual is going to perform that job. If you're running a man-to-man defense in basketball and Bobby decides to go run off and help his friend cover the guard at top and leaves the forward open, well, they're going to score points. Everybody's got a job to do. And the ability for any team to be successful is to each have to perform their responsibilities for their job.
Mm-hmm. And what's the detail?
Good, Ben.
What's the detail of how that analogy, basketball analogy, rolls over to your business? What does that look like there?
It's the same thing. Every clinic, it's a team in that office. The clinic, a patient experience goes far beyond just that interaction with their physical therapist or their doctor. How does the interaction go with the front office staff that they're working with? How does the ancillary staff do with respect to cleaning? I mean, we're in the state and age of COVID, so we have to ensure that they're cleaning every piece of equipment inside and out for the safety of our patients. So everybody has such an important role to ensure not only the outcomes of that patient, but also the experience of that patient.
Matthew?
Yeah, Erich, I'm a little bit confused listening to you. Your dad was a state trooper and your mom worked for government, but you and your sister are both entrepreneurs. And in the green room, you were telling us about your best friend from childhood, who's a big entrepreneur. Where did you get the entrepreneurial bug?
I think it's always been there, and I've always had it. My dad, even though he was a state trooper, had always done different jobs on the side. At one point, he had his home maintenance company. I started working with him when I was in 6th, 7th, 8th grade through high school and college, where we would find jobs to do, and we would be performing them, whether it was additions on our house, landscaping, whatever it may be, we would be attacking those projects.
What did that mean to you to be doing those jobs with your dad?
It's a wonderful memory. You know, my dad is he's a workaholic in a certain sense. I probably get that part of it from him. But it's, you know, to take on a project with your father, and I have this with my son now where I get excited about it. You have a project, you put a plan in place, you put the steps in place, and you achieve that goal. There's nothing more rewarding than that in the end. So, particularly when you're doing it with your spouse, loved one, your child.
And you've talked about kind of the plan and the structure and stuff, but you've also talked a little bit about the fearlessness of being an entrepreneur. And I can't help wondering if there's a connection between the fearlessness of being an entrepreneur and the fearlessness that I think you probably have to be, both to be a state trooper and to be the family of a state trooper, seeing him go off to work every day. Is there a connection there, or am I dreaming that?
No, I would definitely say there is. You know, obviously as a state trooper, there's a lot of risk in those jobs. There's a risk in being an entrepreneur from a financial side. There's a risk in being a state trooper from a personal health side. So you're completely accurate in that regard. And it's understanding that the purpose of what you're doing is bigger than the moment that you're in, and finding perspective on both of those sides.
What does that mean? Say that again. The purpose of what you're doing is bigger than the moment that you're in. Tell me about that.
So, you know, and I'll think of it from a state trooper side. If you get a call for a domestic abuse and a guy has a gun inside, obviously that moment is extremely scary for you. But the purpose of what you're doing, protecting those individuals in the home, is much more important than the fear you may feel or the anxiety you may feel at that particular point in time.
Eric, what's the website address for Strive Physical Therapy?
StrivePhysicalTherapy.com.
We've been speaking with Erich Herkloz, CEO of Strive Physical Therapy and Sports Rehabilitation here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we'll be back in a moment right after this quick break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Bob Rosania, CEO of Ehmke Manufacturing Company. Bob, what is Ehmke Manufacturing Company?
Hello, Herb. Thanks for having me back on. Ehmke Manufacturing Company is an industrial textile product manufacturing company that produces ballistic vests, nylon, tactical gear, aircraft interiors for the U.S. military and the defense industry.
Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters?
Herb, I grew up in Rohome in Northeast Philadelphia. I'm third of four, an older brother, an older sister, and a younger sister.
All righty. Matthew?
Yeah, Bob, you told us in the green room that you played football growing up. What position did you play?
Yes, Matthew. I started out as a quarterback, but they moved me to be a wide receiver.
And why'd they move you to be wide receiver, and what was your role as a wide receiver?
Well, as a deceptively slow wide receiver, Matthew, my role was simply to catch the ball no matter what.
And you told us before that was because of the skills of catching a football. What did you mean by that? What are the skills of catching a football?
Well, when you go across the middle and you catch a ball and you get your block knocked off, you jump up and go after it in the next play. So it's just consistency and never dropping the football.
And when you talk about like that consistency and that focus when you're about to get hit and you got to catch the football, does that have anything to do with running a business?
Absolutely. Because there's every day you're looking to get hit. But guess what? If you get hit, it's not important about how you get hit. It's important about how you get up and go after it the next day or the next play.
Mr. Drummond?
In the green room, you mentioned that you did some odd jobs as a child in your youth. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. My father was a Philadelphia public school teacher, and often the schools were on strike. So the whole family had to chip in, be it odd jobs, delivering papers or cutting lawns, whatever it took. And then as I progressed into high school, to pay for my high school at Penn Charter, I had to work summer jobs for tuition.
And so this experience of having to work, not just for yourself, but in support of others, what has that taught you about, the purpose of work, and how does that relate into what you do at Ehmke?
Great question, Ben. It provides me the empathy of the families that work for me and how important it is that each of those workers have a fair wage and an opportunity to improve their position in lives. Absolutely. That empathy was taught at a very young age to me.
Shannon?
Bob, in the green room, you mentioned that your Uncle Bob was somebody that you always looked up to. Tell us more about that.
Sure. My Uncle Bob Daniels was quite a character, and he was a football star at Frankfurt High School in Philadelphia and then at Temple University. And just his heart was so big and his personality was so big, it was such an aspiration for me, Shannon.
And what did you learn from Uncle Bob that you carry with you into work every day?
He told me never let him take you off the field. You know, always show up, ready to go, ready to play. And if you do that, you'll be successful.
Pat?
Bob, you mentioned that your mother passed away this past year and that you've had to put more emphasis on the tight-knit family relationship you have with your brothers and sisters. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, Pat, we always had a wonderfully close family, but more importantly, now that my father and mother are passed, that are my brother and my two sisters, that we remain that family unit and that closeness.
And how does that impact, what you're doing with Ehmke and how you're building your business there?
Sure. It impacts me because once again, the empathy of those around me. My older brother now works in Ehmke. I get the opportunity to see him every day. That's a mixed bag, but it's often very good. But it just shows me the importance of all sticking together as a family.
Mm-hmm. Frank.
So, Bob, sticking together as a family, you mentioned even early on, each one of you had your own roles and responsibilities as a team, if you will. And then you played on some very successful teams. What does the concept of team mean to you?
It's everything, Frank. I started out playing on the Philadelphia Little Quakers, which gave me an opportunity to earn a scholarship to Penn Charter and then go on to play at Penn. And all along, it was the success of the team that was important. So that's translated at Ehmke right now. All our production cells are set up as teams, and they all rely on each other for not only to be productive, but to earn extra money. So it's it's interwoven throughout my whole life.
Describe yourself as a teammate and a leader of the team at Ehmke.
Sure. I provide the vision to my folks, and then I let my team take over and execute on that and give them all the tools to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Drew?
Yeah, Bob, you mentioned you went to a private high school, Penn Charter in the Philadelphia region, and that's a Quaker-based high school. Can you tell us what that meant to you?
Sure, Drew, and I got a greater appreciation as I went through my years at Penn Charter, my high school years. But the tenets of Quakerism was kind of like I would describe it was like a soft breeze that flew through the curriculum, and it taught ideas like the tenets of Quakerism of the inner light in every individual, consensus decision making, and more importantly, reflection, to take the time out to think. And the Quaker meeting is that. You sit there quietly and you get the chance to reflect, and I still use that today. When we are ready to take on a big project or talk about an important issue, we often take a time to reflect for a couple moments just to center ourselves.
What's the benefit of that reflection?
It's thoughtfulness. It's mindfulness. It's all things considered, consensus, getting everybody's opinion. As a business owner, it's very easy to kind of dictate things, but you have to always remember the skills of your team around you can be beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Matthew?
Bob, I'm curious, and I had that same Philadelphia Quaker background, but I and you're talking about the value of it, but I really remember moving from my Philadelphia public school to the Quaker school and learning to appreciate all those things. I'm curious, when you did that switch from Northeast Philly and the row house and the dad teaching public school to a really fancy private Quaker school, what was that like? Was there any issues with that?
Great question, Matthew. I was a misfit. My best friends in high school, we were a lunch table of the misfit toys because we were all from all over the city. It was a big change for us. But it wasn't until our senior year where we truly appreciated the Quaker meeting where you sat for 45 minutes and said nothing and just reflected. How many high school kids have that experience as you learn from friends, from your friends?
Yeah.
Perfect experience.
And so here's my question then, I guess, going from kind of misfit, as you just described it, to where you appreciated it and learning to fit in at Penn Charter, what did that teach you, and what does that give you that helps you run a company today?
It teaches me to be fearless, believe in myself, don't always just go along with the group, lead, understand where you want to go, and get your team behind you and do it. That's what it taught me.
Drew, did you have another question there?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Bob, on your thoughts. Your dad was there kind of in the grind, and you found your way to an amazing, high school, and then the best college, maybe in the country. And now you have a successful business. What does that mean that, your dad gave you that runway?
My dad always said, Drew, to me that with a good education and committed effort, anything is possible. I was never the smartest kid. I was never the best athlete. I joke with my wife that my biography would be titled B+. But what my dad always taught me was get the best education you can, and then put in that effort, put in that grind, as you say, and anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what an amazing lesson he taught you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. How large or how small is this organization, Bob?
Ehmke is 125 employees, been in business since 1929, Herb.
Wow. Well, you certainly have the experience and have the success. I guess we ought to listen to you. What's the website address for Ehmke Manufacturing Company?
It's ehmkemfg.com.
How do you spell the Ehmke?
Sure, EHMKEMFG.com.
We've been speaking with Bob Rosania, CEO of Ehmke Manufacturing Company, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. And we'll be back in a moment. That's executiveleadersradio.com. Executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break.
Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure.
Back, you're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Mitchell Lightman, president of Exact Payroll. Mitchell, what is Exact Payroll? What are you guys doing?
We're a full-service HCM company that handles payroll, timekeeping, and human resources for small, medium-sized businesses throughout the U.S.
Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order?
I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia. I have an older brother and sister. And so I'm the youngest.
Youngest of three. All right. Matthew.
So I'm the oldest of three, and I know what we did to the youngest. So tell me, what was it like being the youngest?
It was difficult at times, and it was fun at other times. But we were so many years apart that, I was always considered to be the guy they had to take care of, or the little kid they had to take care of.
How'd they take care of you?
Pretty much went and did their own thing and left me to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm. Shannon, what do you got?
Mitchell, tell us about your mom and what she was like when you were growing up.
My mom was the patriarch of the family. She coordinated all the family gatherings and showed all of us stuck together, including the dog. and we had dinner often together. It was a family ritual every night, and it really set in for life.
And what did having dinner together every night, what did you learn from that, and what do you carry with you today from that?
I learned that family is the most important thing in life, and I learned that everyone goes their own separate ways during the day, but comes in and works as a community, as a family, to continue to grow in life.
Frank?
So, Mitchell, how young were you when you first started making money, and what did you do?
My first legitimate job. Now you're going to cut that, but what I did was I worked for my dad. He had a factory in the Kensington area of Philadelphia, and I started as pretty much the low man on the totem pole in the maintenance department, doing some pretty dirty jobs and keeping machinery running.
So what did you learn from your dad in working in the factory and watching him operate his own business?
I learned that while the prestige of owning your own business is nice at times, it's a lot harder than it looks from the outside. And I learned it at a very young age.
So you learned a lot about the good, the bad, and the ugly of running a business. How does that help you protect your customers of Exact Payroll, making sure they stay efficient and compliant?
It gives me, I think, a deeper insight into what it takes to run a business successfully and what it takes to make sure your employees are happy and you're actually complying with the labor laws that are constantly changing.
Mm-hmm. Drew?
Mitchell, when you were growing up, did you ever see your father struggle at his business?
Yes. My dad was in a environmentally sensitive business, and the laws in that business were constantly changing as well. And my dad had to constantly make upgrades to the systems and the equipment to keep in compliance with all the changes in regulations.
What was the impact of seeing that struggle?
I didn't realize it at the time, but I think later on I realized that it put the whole family in sort of a fluidity mode that allowed us to kind of move from one situation to another. And an old saying that I used to listen to was, "There's nothing certain in life except death and taxes." So that's something that's kind of stuck with me.
And what's the benefit of that fluidity to your clients today?
It can no better exemplified by the current state of the stimulus packages that came out in the middle of 2020, and like the payroll companies and businesses had to turn on a dime to take advantage of it. And it's not as easy as just saying, okay, we're going to do it. There's all kinds of software programming and procedures that have to be changed. And we're extremely proud of the way we were able to handle it and the ability for us to communicate with our clients who were very confused at the time about what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Pat?
Mitchell, what did you do for fun from ages 8 to 14?
I played a variety of sports, hockey, golf, liked to go fishing, music. So I had fun.
And who took you out when you went fishing and golfing?
Well, my dad took me out for the most part, but I would find others to go out with. He had a friend who was actually his insurance agent who I remember going out with frequently. And he was such a nice guy. And every time I see him, I'm so happy to see him.
You also said, I think, that you golfed with your grandfather a lot growing up. Is that true?
Yes. He took me out into a chip and putt when I was 5 years old, and I ended up, taking to the game, and I ended up on the golf team in high school and still play today.
So it seems like a lot of the activities you did growing up were with older people. How does that influence what you're doing today, and how does that impact how you run your business?
I think it helps me to get the type of relationships that are needed to grow this type of business. A lot of the younger folks were not business owners. They were successful, but I needed to develop and maintain strong relationships with folks who were a little more seasoned. So I guess, and I just naturally gravitate towards the older folks. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. Ben?
So you've spoken in great depth about the importance of various perspectives you've gained whether as the youngest with your siblings or working with your father, with your grandfather, doing activities. How does that relay to your business where you work with, clients that might have 1 employee or 3,000 employees?
The perspective of being able to relate a life experience to what a client might be going through, or how I might be able to help that client avoid some pitfalls going down the road, I think is invaluable. So we apply not just my perspective, but our whole team's perspective, because I gathered a bunch of folks who have worked with other payroll vendors and we end up coming up with some really great solutions, and it's been invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, what other questions you got? What else you thinking?
When it's interesting to me, Mitchell, when you talk about fishing and golf and perspectives and even maybe a little bit having good relationships with older people, there are things that bring to mind patience and reflectiveness to me. Is that fair? Does that describe you?
Bullseye. Absolutely. I like to give a lot of thought to things. I like to make sure that I'm considering all the angles or all the perspectives, and making sure that I'm not leaving any sort of stone unturned when it comes to perspective. Absolutely.
And how young were you when that was the kind of kid you were and you knew that about yourself?
Boy, I remember that from, summers at camp.
Explain that to me. In what way?
I didn't really want to be at camp. So I started thinking about, why am I here? What am I doing? And all this other stuff. And while all the kids were so happy to be at camp, I was like, I'd rather be home, playing with my erector set or whatever the heck it was. And so I ended up thinking about, what am I doing here? And why are all these people around me having so much fun? And so when I was a kid, I was a little awkward, and I kind of grew into feeling good about myself and looking in the mirror and liking what I saw.
And it feels to me like that whole sense of being able to step back and look at things and kind of figure things out. That's actually, I think, what you're doing for your customers now, isn't it? Is that fair?
That is, and specializing with more complex customers is really what I enjoy. There's nothing more satisfying and gratifying than being able to help a customer who is struggling because they might be a good cook or they might be a good attorney, but on the back end of things, they need to make sure somebody's taking care of their compliance.
Wait a minute. I thought you were doing their payroll. It sounds like you're playing handholder, psychologist, therapist, business consultant. What?
Well, running a business is not just producing a product and paying your employees. It's making sure your employees are happy and the chemistry in your business is strong. And we try to facilitate that, and we try to make business owners aware that they need to treat their employees well with benefits.
Do you get paid extra for doing that stuff?
No. Why
do you do that?
We do it with the hopes that a client will recognize our value, and they will continue to use us and refer us to their friends and businesses.
What's the website address for Exact Payroll?
It's exactpayroll.com, EXACT. Payroll.com.
We've been speaking with Mitchell Lightman, president of Exact Payroll, here on Executive Leaders Radio. And I'm wondering, Mr. Matthew Shapiro, who's the managing partner of a 100-year-old, well-known, well-respected law firm in Philadelphia called Obermeyer Redman, could you please give us the rundown on who we had on the show today?
I'd love to, Herb. It's been a really great show. I've enjoyed this morning. We started off with Tammy White, who's the president of the United Way of Berks County. Then we had Erich Herkloz, the CEO of Strive Physical Therapy and Sports Rehabilitation. We followed him with Bob Rosania, the CEO of Ehmke Manufacturing Company. And just now we wrapped it up with Mitchell Lightman, the president of Exact Payroll.
I would like to thank my co-hosts, including Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Pat Riley, USI, Ben Drummond, D2 Integrated Solutions, Frank Hennessy, Premier Planning, and Matthew Shapiro Obermeyer for giving me a hand structure to questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.